In July I read 4,051 pages across 14 books. My biggest book that I read was 617 pages, and that is Battle Royale by Koushun Takami, and my oldest book is The Shadow, which I read via ebook, which was published in 1996. For the genres that I read this month, I read 2 contemporary books, 3 dystopians, 2 non-fictions, 1 sci-fi, 1 mystery, 1 history, which I don't know what I'm holding up anymore, and 4 fantasy. For the nationalities, I read 1 Panamanian author, 4 American authors, 3 Japanese authors, 2 Canadian authors, 3 English authors, and 1 Australian author. And for the formats, I actually read primarily via ebooks this month. I read 1 mixed media between ebook and physical books, 6 paperbacks, and 7 ebooks. I injured my arm at the beginning of this month, and so holding up physical books was not it, so it was much easier just to hold up my Kindle, so it was a Kindle heavy month. So the first book I read this month, I'm trying to get up on Goodreads because it was so unmemorable that I don't have anything to say about it, which does not bode well. I believe I read it as part of my reading books from around the world prompt, and the author is Panamanian, so I picked it up for that. I gave it 2 stars on Goodreads. The borderland of fantasy between reality and unreality, life and death, love and sex, God and people. I clearly found it underwhelming. From what I do remember, there was a lot of men being men, which is not helpful for me as a female reader. It's all not, you know, what I am aiming to read in my books. A lot of men being very sex-focused, on only caring about that in a woman, only caring about a woman when she can add to his life rather than for her as she is. There was not a lot of depth in any of the stories. I was not gripped by any of them. I was very much just blasting through it to tick it off a list, unfortunately. So whilst I have now read something from Panama, unfortunately I did not enjoy it, and if that is what Panama is like, which I assume it is not, but it would be a bad view of Panama if it was. Just, it's very sexist, very traditional, very, why am I reading this man's thoughts? Unfortunately. I wanted better. I did not get it. I'm going to mention these both at the same time, because why not? It's volumes 1 and 2 of the Battle Royale manga, written of course by Koushun Takami, as I mentioned earlier, but also then drawn by Masayuki Taguchi. These I picked up because one of the prompts, Defying Authority, I believe is the prompt for the Our Fantasy Readathon, and so I was like, oh, everyone says Battle Royale fits into this, and my partner has the first 7 volumes of the manga, as well as the full book, but the full book is big, and so I'll just read some of the manga. There were a couple of issues with this. One is that the Defying Authority doesn't happen so quickly in the book that my partner only has 7 volumes, but there are, I think, 12 in total, so I was like, oh, I'll just read the first volume of the manga, but it doesn't count because the Defying of Authority slightly happens, but not really, in volume 1, and so I was like, oh, I'll do volume 2 as well, and I read these really, really quickly, and I also then quickly realised that I am gonna have to read the whole novel, and so I just decided to dive in because I was curious. This manga, I will speak more about the book when I get to it later, because of course I finished that this month, but for the manga specifically, it was actually quite interesting to see the violence drawn out on the page, because even though it is the same as what is written in the words in the book, it feels more violent, drawn out. I also think that the manga focuses more on the personalities of everyone that we get to know, whereas the book does focus more just on the 2 protagonists. They do talk about the others, but the manga seems to give more depth to the other characters, so I am actually tempted, even though I've read the whole book, to continue on with the manga to see how that goes, but we shall see. Then I read The Battles of Tolkien by David Day. This is one of the World of Tolkien collection books by him, where he goes through the books and talks about the different aspects and kind of explains away certain bits with gorgeous illustrations throughout. I do enjoy these, but they're nothing that special, unfortunately. It's a beautiful collection, but it just is what it is. I don't even know what to say about this. So there are maps for each battle that is mentioned in the Lord of the Rings books and The Hobbit, and the Silmarillion actually, so the whole Lord of the Rings universe, and there are maps for all of those battles talking about how the armies attacked and where this worked and where it didn't and where the battle tactics were. So it's a really interesting analysation of the world, and given that I don't think I'm ever going to read the Silmarillion, it is nice to get those extra bits in these texts. Then for another ebook, slightly better than the last one, and that is The Hope of Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Again, there isn't too much to say about this because it is set both before and after the books. It's set after with flashbacks, and I don't want to spoil anything from the main book. But I did enjoy this extra little glimpse into the Elantris universe and its workings, as well as enjoying getting to see a little bit of how they settle down after all of the dramatic events in the book. This is very easy to read, it is free to find online, and I do recommend it if you enjoyed Elantris. Then I read a non-fiction, Dead Famous by Greg Jenner. I really enjoyed this one, An Unexpected History of Celebrity. So this is talking about fame, what is fame, and celebrity as we define them both today. They are two different things. And how far back can you go with a definition of celebrity where we still had them in ancient times, and how were they portrayed, looking into different individuals. This was really, really interesting. I blasted through it. It was utterly fascinating, and some really interesting historical figures. We don't go too far back because we do at certain points, but then at the same time with Jenner's personal definition of celebrity, it requires a certain amount of international and intercontinental communication, which of course wasn't facilitated at any sort of speed until much later in human history. So it doesn't go too far back. I think the 1500s is as far as it really goes back. It mentions some earlier, but it's mainly 1700s onward that he's talking about, and I really enjoyed seeing what we perceive as modern vapidness portrayed historically hundreds of years ago. Humanity really has not changed that much. Birth of a Dynasty by Chinaza Bado. I loved this. I am ridiculously excited for the sequel already. I need it in my mitts. Oh, it was good, it was good, it was good. And I also love this edition as well from Broken Binding. So this is following dynasties where a house, a well-known name, was culled because of a prophecy that people from their house and people from another house would combine forces, likely in a marriage, and would take down everyone else. And so there is a leading power, a different named house, that decides that they're not going to let this happen, and they try to destroy them. They completely destroy one house, and the other house seems to bend the knee. And I've been looking at a lot of Game of Thrones content, surprise surprise. The other house seems to bend the knee and seems to be acquiescing to the demands. And we follow the perspective, at least in this first book, of two children from that house. One that survives the culling and they know he's alive and they're trying to find him and kill him, and the other who is a young girl who is sent off to the capital to be manipulated with, played with, essentially, so that they have some control over that house. This is absolutely fascinating, really well written. There is potential for this to just be a duology, but also potential for this to end up as a long-spanning series. There is so much that could be done here. The writing is gorgeous. I was absolutely obsessed and drawn in and turning the pages. I cannot recommend this high fantasy enough. I'm so excited to see where this goes. Then for a little bit of a different vibe, but another one, I had some really good reads this month. I didn't read much, but I had some fantastic reads. This is another one, and that is The Devil and the Dark Water by Stuart Turton. This is the second book I've read from him. The first was The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I have to check because I always get that confused with the other one, which I didn't even read. I will say that for both books, my issue has been the ending. There's been one twist that I feel like the author thought was clever and I haven't liked in the ending of both books. So that was disappointing. But in this one, we are following a main character who, they are essentially the Watson to a Sherlock. Slightly different, set in the 1600s. It's Dutch colonisers going over to the east, and they are on a boat going back to Europe when shit is happening, stuff's going down, people are murdered, there's a mystery, there's all of this, and the Watson of the pair has to try and solve the mystery because the Sherlock of the pair, who is called Pips, is locked in the depths of the ship. It's a really, really interesting mystery story as well. Some of it happens on land before they board, some of it is entirely on the boat, some of it is historical, some of it is happening immediately, and the twists at the end were really interesting, and I really enjoyed quite a lot of the twists until a very final one. I'm trying to figure out a way of saying it that doesn't spoil it for people. We discover something about Pips right at the end. That'll do. Ruined the whole book for me. And yet, despite that, I loved this much of the... Well, it took me a minute to get into it. So I was like absolutely obsessed with this. It's really well written, really pacey, really engrossing. You want to know what's happening. You want to see how these characters are growing as people, how they're learning about the world around them and about the people on the ship with them, how we're learning about the backgrounds of all of these different characters and where it then goes and how it twists. It was just that final bit that ruined it for me. So I think I'm going to logically give this a 4-star. Emotionally, because of that final moment, the book is like a 2-star. Because it pissed me off. But the rest of it was really, really good, and I really enjoyed the reading experience, which is why I am going to be logical and give it a 4-star rating. Then Goldenhand by Garth Nix. This is book 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 or 4, depending on your opinion, of the Sabriel series. Depending on your opinion is because Clariel is a prequel, and you can either read this before or after. I read it after because of some stuff that I saw that was said online, but it's actually put before it, so whatever order you want to read it in. This series is known as a variety of names: the Old Kingdom, Abhorsen series, the Sabriel series, and in the first book of the series we follow a girl as she becomes a woman, and she ends up with these bells that are on a bandolier, and they can send people back into death, and there are dark magic creatures, and she's trying to save her land and her country from those creatures, and she's just been thrust into this role, which is actually a very important and high-powered one, but there's no one to train her into it. Obviously, we're quite far through the series at this point, so this one is following some characters that we have met previously in the, I believe it's in the Abhorsen book that we meet them, and then there's also a character that we then meet that is then in Clariel. So that was interesting to read having read Clariel, and I am happy I read it that way around, but I think you can do it either way. It is difficult to discuss this one without discussing the previous books because they do very much build upon them. I really enjoy seeing Lyriel and their interactions with Sabriel, how they are the Abhorsen in waiting and they are actually getting to learn, but also their interactions with Nicholas Sayre, who is a character that we met previously, and how that then develops and how we are furthering the world. I love this YA series so much. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do wish that I'd gotten into it when I had the chance when I was younger, because I would have been obsessed, but thankfully this is one of the YAs that I can still love and adore when I am older. That doesn't happen with me for all YAs, and I just am obsessed with this series. I can't believe I am so close to completing it. I think I just have Ciel and Eleanor, which is the final book, and that's it. I'm completely up to date. He might not release any more. What do I do then? We are at the point I said. Battle Royale. This is by Koushun Takami, and this is indeed the translated novel. Let me see if they are going to name the translator. I hope so. Yuji Oniki is a writer and translator. So Battle Royale. I hadn't actually seen anything about this, consumed anything about this before I read The Hunger Games, because I read The Hunger Games at the correct age for it, YA, back in the day. It was long enough along that all 3 books were out and I got them as a bind-up, but it was just after the release of the 3rd book, I believe. And I was obsessed with that series and I love it, and I can see a lot of the parallels in here. So I will say, Suzanne Collins claims that she was not inspired by and hadn't heard of Battle Royale. I think that's bullshit. I think that she had read this, watched this, read the manga, I don't know, but she had seen this full book, this full thing, because there's stuff throughout the entire story, and I think she then took that and switched it from Japan in the post-World War II environment and instead moved it to modern day America. Even just doing that, I feel like she could have still been like, yeah, I was inspired by Battle Royale and I wanted to set it in modern USA. That's fine. On top of that, the second that the first book ends, she then expands upon the entire world. So separate from all of the prequels and sequels and everything that's come out, just the 3 in the trilogy, books 2 and 3 are completely her own, and obviously building upon this foundation, but completely her own and don't take anything from this. So I really don't know why she denied it, because she very much was inspired by a concept, took it and twisted it to fit her own society, which is what you want to do with dystopians that are talking about issues that are wrong with our society now. And then she has expanded it and has done brilliant work in making it very relative to the Western culture. and to the USA specifically, and making it work within today's environment. She modernised it, she westernised it, and that is enough for her to say, yeah, I was inspired by this, and instead she claims she wasn't. So I do understand, especially because obviously this book is older than The Hunger Games by a fair bit, I do understand why people who read this may not want to read The Hunger Games and are pissed off about it. I personally still love The Hunger Games. 5-star series for me. I still think it's beautifully written and I need to reread it. But I do see the parallels. Then, this book on its own. Damn, this is dark. This is, you very much get dropped in the deep end. I'm actually quite glad I started with the manga because you get through the beginning faster in the manga. A lot of the beginning is describing the settings, figuring out what's happening, and of course they can just portray that in imagery. And you get through that faster and get to the point. And so then I found when I was going back and reading through this, I was like, I swear it was much faster to get to the actual awful part of this. Like, I'm just going through very slowly then figuring out what's happening. So that was interesting, and if you didn't know what Battle Royale was about, I think would be so good. But this book is now so ubiquitous that it's like, it's only like 70 pages out of 600, but I'm like, come on now, hurry up. So yeah, if this was your first time reading it and you'd never heard of Battle Royale as a concept, then it would be really well done. Unfortunately for the author, it's become ubiquitous, so later readers will have a slight struggle with that. Regardless, when you then get into it, the betrayals, the lack of ability to trust, the various different skill sets that the children have are utilised so interestingly and so well, and looks at human psychology and at cultural norms, and is really fascinating. If you don't know, Battle Royale is set in a future for the time, which is essentially run like it's a dictatorship, with an all-powerful, I think, monarch at the top, who no one ever sees, and everyone is very controlled about what they can say and what they can do. Rock music is banned, for example, because it is, you know, adverse to the society. And we are following these children who are at school, and a class from a specific year, so grade 7, year 9, I don't know, I can't remember, it says. A class of junior high school students. As a Brit, that doesn't help me, but maybe it helps any Americans watching. But yes, it's like high school students, and 1 year of them is always at risk, essentially, from all of the schools around the country to go and do this battle. And we are following a class that ends up getting picked. They are taken, in this case, to an island and told, you have to kill each other. The last person who is alive wins, and they will be, you know, paid by the government, and it's an honour to have won this. The way they pitched this to the public when it started was that this was military training. We needed to be able to keep our military safe and to prepare the children, and we need only the strongest. This was now so long ago that it doesn't really factor into anything, but it is how they started it. And so we have these children, and they are imported into a classroom on the island after being knocked out with drugs, and then they are told that they're going to have to kill each other. And they are given a duffel bag before they leave, and in the duffel bag is a weapon. Now, some of those weapons are great. Some of them are machine guns or pistols, some are knives, some are nunchucks, and some are bulletproof vests, but some are also useless. Like, you get nothing to help you. So it's very much luck of the draw because you just pick the bag at random as you leave. It's just, as I said earlier, a fascinating look at the play of psychology and the awfulness of a dictatorship, and it's a very, very well written book, and even though it is over 600 pages, it was really so engrossing, and I loved reading it as much as you can for a book with that sort of content. Then for, I believe, my first arc of the month, and the only one, I think, yeah, and that is A Thread of Light by Neema Shah, so thank you very much to the folks over at Book Break. This is a historical fiction set in London in 1941, so of course the Blitz is going on, it's in World War II, and these two women that we are following for the points of view are both still at home, as are the majority of women. One of them is an ARP warden. If you don't know about the Blitz, that is someone who goes around and makes sure that everyone's windows are properly blacked out and no light is seeping through for the bombers to target, but additionally when the bombers do then target homes, they go in and try to save people from the rubble. So one of our points of view is a young woman named Ruby, who is an ARP warden, and the other woman we follow is Kitty. She's a barrister, but she has also come across from India and is unable to find any work as a barrister in the UK because she's a woman and because she is Indian. Her husband, who is Indian, is able to find work, but it is not as good as it would have been back home. And they are also, amongst all of this, fighting for Indian independence. Ruby ends up going into the building that they use as their base for wanting Indian independence. It's all very official, the government knows, it's very organised, and she finds the base and she goes in just curious about it, and she ends up learning it is for the movement for Indian independence and ends up speaking to people there, and you learn more about Ruby and herself and her family and how that impacts her opinions, and you also get to see her view of these people who are fighting for the independence. And of course the other point of view, Kitty, is actually actively fighting for this with the legal knowledge behind it, but also with the knowledge that colonialism is quite heavy and that, understandably, to a certain extent, a lot of the Brits in Britain are saying, why are you doing this now? We're in the middle of a world war. So, a very interesting little book, really well written, really interesting. I was fascinated to see these two very different women in this world and ending up kind of cross-interacting with each other, but only minutely. It was a very interesting book, a very different view on World War II, because of course most of the stuff we're given is from white folks. So very, very interesting, and I really recommend it, honestly. It is quick to get through, it's like 300 something pages, 315 pages, so really quick to get through, a really unique view on that time in history and on everything that was happening in India whilst World War II was going on. So, very much enjoyed that. And then, so I loved Birth of Dynasty. That is a fucking fantastic book. So is this. Bluebird by Ciel, Pierlot. I'm so sorry. And this book I got from Waypoint Books, thank you so much. I got this as part of a brand box. It is linked down below where you can get a discount from it, and what they do is they send you 1 or 2 books where Waypoint Books will look at your Goodreads, your Storygraph, an Excel spreadsheet if you send that to them, and see what you like reading and will recommend you a book. And the person behind Waypoint Books is Hannah from the channel Letter M. She has never once steered me wrong. I think the lowest was a good 3-star read that she's ever recommended to me. But I had put this one off for a long time because another mutual acquaintance of ours had read this on her recommendation and they thought it was awful. And so I was like, oh dear god, this is quite a lot of book to get through for it to be bad. So I put it off and put it off, and then randomly just decided I'm reading it. Picked it up. Oh my fucking god, this book is so good. It's very much its own book, but it is also the most Murderbot vibes to ever bot. Oh my god, it's so good, it's so good. This book definitely stands on its own, but if you want a vibe match, Murderbot. Oh my fucking god. I am so annoyed I left this for so long. I loved this book. I was obsessed with it. And when I then told Mr. Pellinor how obsessed I was, and he was like, okay, so, like, what would you compare it to? And I said Murderbot, and he went, oh, no wonder you loved it. This was, oh, it's so good, so good. So, we're following a woman called Rig, and she has escaped her homeworld of Pyrite. There are 3 kind of colonising nations, I'm going to call them. Pyrite, Ascetic, and Ossuary. And she escaped from Pyrite. She had been working with them, as everyone who lives on the homeworld has to and is forced to, and she doesn't like what she's done, so she escapes and goes off with a faction that is trying not to be part of any of these 3 colonisers. I'm calling them colonisers because they have colonised various different planets, literally, but also then the indigenous peoples that were on the planets are subjugated, enslaved, forced to work for them, and in some cases eliminated through genocide. And she is actually from one of these protected groups, but was incredibly intelligent in a very specific way that they wanted, and so was boosted up the ranks and used as an example of like, look, we have a good one. So, she escapes this, she has something that they want, and she does not want to give it to them, because she doesn't want them to hurt people with what she created. And she is going through the galaxy and trying to escape them, trying to outsmart them, trying to fight them, and she's also developing relationships. We see them developing on the page, some of them have developed beforehand, and she's very sassy, very funny, and it's also a lesbian relationship in here. Her girlfriend is lovely. Does it say her girlfriend's name? I can't remember. No, because it's me. While she's doing all of this, and while they finally honed in on her because she's escaped from Pyrite and been able to keep off their radar for a while, it then turns out that they've kidnapped her twin sister, who she's not seen since she escaped because her twin wouldn't come with her. She was devoted to the cause. She had been successfully brainwashed. And despite all of that, she can't leave her sister. And so she's now trying to find them, to track them down, to free her twin. It's just so fucking good. With panache and pizzazz, a librarian girlfriend and a lethal bounty hunter as a passenger, Rig's here to be gay, do crime, and hopefully not die in the process. Is a fantastic punchline for the synopsis. This book is so fun. I am so mad that there isn't a sequel. I'm aware that this is a self-encapsulated story. It does all wrap up. But I just want, like, you know how Murderbot has loads of little stories in it? I want more little stories. There must be something that they can write about Rig. It is, oh, it's so good. I loved it. This was just absolutely up my street. 5 stars. Once again, a perfect recommendation from Waypoint Books. Oh my god. I fucking loved this book. Ah! So good, so good. So good. My bookmark. It fell out. How rude. But yes, I can't recommend this enough. If you enjoy sci-fi, if you've enjoyed Murderbot, obviously this is a little bit chunkier than the Murderbot novellas. However, same sort of vibe. It has the same readability as well, so even though it is big, you will still be flying through it at a fair pace of knots. So, I highly recommend this. And with a very messy stack, those are the books that I read in July. However, I do have 3 little things I want to mention, which is that I read 3 comics. Just mentioning it for posterity, I'm not really a comics reader. I enjoyed these plenty. I do not plan on picking up any more of them. They were from the free comic book day, and I always pick them up and enjoy them, and then they never go any further. So Mega Man Showdown Special, Supernatural, and World of Archie. I enjoyed all of them, but will not be continuing. For me personally, the speed I read anything that is drawn, that is manga, comics, all of that, I read them incredibly fast. Really fast. And because they are of course paying artists for their time, for their skill, for their expertise, they are then very expensive for very little of my time. Like, this takes me 10-15 minutes, and whilst I then enjoy the free comic, it's a lot to spend. The price of comics varies depending on the comic, I know that, but they're not cheap. And so for me to then spend 10 minutes on it, when instead I could read a novel or a non-fiction, is the reason that I don't go for these. And also the reason I only read manga really when it's gifted to me or when I borrow it. Because I really enjoy it, but just financially it feels fiscally irresponsible. But yes, I read those. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of these or if you're going to pick up any of these. I'm thinking Birth of a Dynasty, I'm thinking Bluebird, I'm thinking The Thread of Light. Highly, highly recommend. Thank you so much for watching, folks, and if you'd like to see what I end up reading in August, please do hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!